just because you came from a broken family, that doesn't mean that a broken family has to come from you.
Yeah. Our parents have been the way that they are for longer than they've known how not to be.
So many of us are distracted by the entry point conversations around finances that we're not really thinking about relationships in longevity and really thinking about what does it mean financially to merge my life with somebody else's.
Just because you get married doesn't mean you put your destiny on hold.
Hello and welcome to the To My Sisters podcast. I'm Renee.
And I'm Courtney, and we are your online sisters and hosts of the To My Sisters podcast.
Now we are all about promoting the wellness, growth and development of a community of sisters across the world.
And in today's episode, sisters, we are back. Have you missed the blue couch? Have you missed the setup? You actually have not missed the setup.
Not even a little bit.
The compliments that we have received on the new setup is giving this couch is dusty.
Yeah.
But no, honestly, we are so excited to be back. Today, we are going to be debriefing, girl chat, girl gist, okay, about the episodes with the guys. Now, if you have been living under a rock, we put out like 3 episodes in a week.
Just like 3, just 3.
2 of which were us having conversations with some amazing men who we know, have personal relationships with, about dating, marriage, fatherhood, gender wars, character building, everything. We really did only scratch the surface, to be fair, but we wanted to ask the questions that have been on our mind, like, why do men move mad?
Why are they crazy?
We are so appreciative of the positive feedback. I know a lot of you are apprehensive about men entering into the space that we've created for women, and don't worry, there are female guests coming up real soon. But we wanted to reflect and do a little, girl chat in the corner about the things that the guys said on the various topics we asked them about. And we've read your comments, we've seen your responses, and we know so many of you were impacted positively by these conversations. And we kind of wanted to dive a bit more because there's only so much you can say in one conversation. Right. And so, sisters, that's what this episode is. Chime in the YouTube comments. If you're listening on audio, chime in on the Spotify comments. Come over to Instagram to make sure that you are involved in the conversation, okay?
Plugged in.
But before we get into it, housekeeping.
It's
been a while. It's been a minute.
Oh my gosh, the house must be dusty.
A little bit dusty.
It just must
a little bit dusty.
A little bit dirty. The house is not dirty. We have kept it well swept whilst we were away. I think the first housekeeping is, guys, please, if you're listening into this podcast and you've been enjoying the content that we've been putting out over the last 2 weeks or so, share with a sister, share with a brother. Yeah. One thing we're super grateful for is the fact that men themselves have been chiming in on the conversation too. So please, as a long-time listener, as a newbie listener, as a medium-term listener, however long you've been part of the sister sphere, please get our message out there and get more people plugged in and tuned into the work that we do over at To My Sisters by being a sister. Please subscribe, please share. Also, please sign up to the mailing list. You wait until the end to hear us say it. Hi, we're here in the beginning to tell you. If you haven't signed up to the mailing list, you're missing out every single week. So please sign up. And please subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. If you've been listening and you are not subscribed, baby. What you doing?
What's going on?
You a guest at best.
Oh my gosh. But yes, we are excited to be back. I don't think there's anything too specific, but watch out for next week because we do have some housekeeping announcements about events and link ups and things where you can see us. So definitely stay tuned for those. But you guys know, in true fashion, it's been a while. We have a ding dilemma, and this one's a little bit different. We actually put this dilemma up on our Instagram and the sisters chimed in as well, which is even more reason for you to actually follow us so that you can drop your 2 cents on dilemmas as well. And if you do want a dilemma answered by the Sisterhood, then send it to dilemmas@tomysisters.com. But our sisters already done that. The girls have opinions, so let's dive into it. So this dilemma is titled, Help, should I make amends with my father?
Oh man,
my daddy. Okay, trigger warning. Also, this dilemma mentions abuse, so if your heart's in a tender place, let's just be skipping.
Be skipping to the meat.
Okay, so your most recent episode with the 2 dads really touched me and has prompted me to write this dilemma. I'm a 27-year-old woman. Hello, sister. Welcome to the show. I'm feeling very conflicted. I recently got married, but during the wedding planning process, a lot of things happened. I found out that my dad has been abusing my mum. They were separated for over 15 years and got back together during the pandemic. She then found the courage to leave again during the wedding planning last year. Turns out the reason they separated all those years ago was because of the abuse in the first place. The fallout resulted in my dad not attending the wedding due to resentment towards her on his end. I haven't spoken to him since because I was angry at him for not loving me enough to attend my wedding. He also has made 0 attempts to reach out, but I feel like if I reach out, I'd be betraying my mum. Before this, we used to speak about once or twice a year on birthdays, etc. Since I didn't grow up in the same household as him since I was about 9. So cutting him off doesn't seem like it would be a big deal. But will I regret it if I'm a parent myself?
Wow. Whoa, what a dilemma.
Wow.
I think what was wonderful about putting out this dilemma on social media was really getting the diversity in sisters' opinions. I think sometimes, I know you enjoy us reacting to these dilemmas and offering our solution/advice, but it was so refreshing hearing and seeing other people's opinions. And it actually really challenged my initial thinking around this dilemma, because I read it and I was just like, man, sometimes we're fed the narrative that we have to be the bigger person and that the most healed thing, the bigger thing, the most mature thing would be to try and, make amends in some way in order to retain that relationship. But I think from even reading the dilemma's responses and realizing that everything is a journey and protecting your peace is super, super important. And sometimes forgiveness and overcoming a situation doesn't always look like making amends in that particular way. That definitely really opened my eyes to the variety in ways in which this sister can approach this, right? So I think, sis, one of the main things that I heard from kind of listening and reading that dilemma was, I don't want to be in a position where I will regret things in the future, and I don't want it to affect my relationship with, my kids moving forward. Will this impact basically my capacity to be a parent? And I think just because, I heard this phrase in a sermon I was listening to, which was, just because you came from a broken family, that doesn't mean that a broken family has to come from you. And we're not limited to the experiences that we had as children or the relationships that we may have with our parents. And it doesn't have to be a cycle just because that's all you know or that's the experience that you've had. So don't think that your relationship with your father, in whatever capacity it's expressed in, that is a marker, or your future relationships with your kids will be marked by that relationship. Of course it has affected you. Of course, it is something that you have had to contend with in terms of childhood trauma, right? Not having a relationship with your father for so long of your life, that's only been relegated to like once or twice a year. And then also having the potential of being able to make amends, but then that being dashed by the reality of seeing and experiencing and hearing that your mother has gone through significant abuses. You are well within your right to take a step back. Like there's no rush to make amends just because you feel like, in the future, this is going to affect you in the future. Take your time with it. And I think also the fact that you got married, girl, like there's so many things happening in your life that are opportunities for you to experience joy, opportunities for you to really double down and really invest in the relationships that you have. And, getting married is not a small feat. You now have a husband that you really want to be pouring into and you really want to be building solid foundations with. So I think, first of all, take your time with it. Like, it's actually okay to pause and reflect. And this doesn't have to be an overnight amends. This doesn't have to be you reaching out within the next 6 to 12 months. It can be, maybe a year, 2, 3, however long you feel you need before you reach out. If you actually want to reach out, that is. And I think really defining, what does it mean to have peaceful relations with your family, with your father? Do you want your father to be an active participant in your life? And it's at your liberty and your discretion to decide what that looks like according to where you're at right now in the journey. And I think it's also worth, I love the fact that you were considering your mother in all of these affairs, because ultimately she was the one that was going through the abuse whilst they were together and also whilst they were apart. So it's good that you're already thinking about your mother. And I think it may be worth bringing her in the conversation, not necessarily to kind of dictate, oh, this is how you should relate to your dad. But I think at least bringing her into the fold and understanding what her perspective is like. I think understanding her story and her experience a little bit more, because you trying to really understand your mother, that's a whole nother story and a whole nother journey in of itself. And that's going to take time, even in terms of her transparency, vulnerability, and comfort in being able to share her story with your father. So I think the first thing is really, really take your time and pour into the relationships that you have already that are bringing you so much love and joy, especially as a newlywed, especially as somebody that has a pre-existing relationship with your mother that stuck around and was your primary caregiver. And then really take your time to think about, what does peace look like moving forward for you? It may not necessarily be you reaching out to your dad straight away. It may not be you reaching out to your father at all. But I think having the time to really process and figure out, what does peace look like to you? Do you genuinely want your father in your life for the sake of having a relationship with your father, and not operating from a place of fear in that the things that happened in the past are doomed to happen again in the future? You are the leader of your own life. You have the opportunity to write your own story with your own pen, and whatever happened in the past doesn't have to happen in the future. And a healthy family and a healthy relationship can come from you, and that's not contingent on your relationship or your capacity to make amends with your father. It's about you and your own personal development. It's about you and your own decision to be a loving mother, to be a loving wife. It's in the decisions that we make every single day to be that person that we've decided to be. So I think take your time with it. If you decide that you would like to make amends with your father, and that's the best thing for you to do, then of course do that. I think you are well within your right to take, a cooling off period, especially the fact that he didn't attend your wedding, Sha. That's painful. We all have the dream of our parents. Well, some of us, most of us would have the dream of having our family and coming from a loving family environment enough that they'd be able to come to our wedding. And I think, again, leaning on the other places or the other relationships that bring you joy and comfort, your friends, your family, leaning on the people that actually did show up for you during this time. And then if it does bring you some kind of peace and closure in making amends, whatever that looks like for you with your father, making sure that you express that hurt as well is really, really important. But I think don't allow your future to be stifled by experiences in the past, and don't think that your capacity to have a future healthy relationship with your kids is contingent on you making amends with your father.
100%.
So yeah, that's what I would say. A whole mouthful, but
no, that was good. I completely agree. I completely agree. I love that you started with the fact that peace is important, but also I think forgiveness is important too. Now, don't hear that and get angry. I mean, in the sense that forgiveness doesn't have to mean reconciliation, but I think forgiveness is you healing and releasing what has been something that has angered you, provoked you, rightly so. I think, like you identified towards the end, somebody not attending your wedding, somebody doing something so violent and repulsive towards your mother, and obviously you holding your mother so close in your heart. I guess your idea of your parents has completely been shattered in your mind. You feel as though you maybe didn't have the wedding that you imagined or that you wanted. And I think all of these things go towards really hurting us. And not to say that your hurt will manifest in some kind of toxic way in your life, but I think for your own peace of mind, literally releasing that in forgiveness and just forgiving your father will be a really great step for you. It doesn't sound like you're dealing with unforgiveness, but I definitely think just making sure that those wounds have really healed. But like I said, forgiveness does not mean reconciliation. Your relationship with your dad doesn't need to necessarily be rekindled. And I get that, question that lingers in your mind, which is, well, if I become a parent, or when I become a parent, will I regret that, I don't have my father around me? My child may not have access to their grandfather. And I think the question here is, do you believe he has the capacity to be a good presence in your life and in your children's life? If you, as his daughter, only speak to him occasionally at best around birthdays and all of that, maybe introducing him into the picture isn't the best stability you could offer your future children in terms of their relationship with their grandfather. And it could just lead to further disappointment, because just because you've forgiven somebody, especially when you've forgiven them without them giving you an apology, it mostly is that they have not changed. And so now you have to kind of go off the basis of, okay, this is who my dad is. As much as it's a very hard reality to accept, from the things my mother has told me, from what I have experienced as his child, this is who he is. And it's not the most positive person. And whilst I have forgiven him, what I am entitled to is boundaries, and making sure that those boundaries protect you, your family, but also your mother, her peace of mind as well, her sanity, because abuse is really traumatic, right? For you as a child, it's traumatic, but as her as a victim, it's traumatic. And also for your children, you know, to introduce this another party into their family who they're biologically related to, but may not stick around long enough for them to really cultivate a relationship with. I think you have to guard your heart and the heart of the people whose heart you can actually guard, like your children. So I do think that you're allowed to have boundaries, and it may not necessarily be a cutting off, but it may be I'm okay with the level of our relationship being this. You're my father. I don't just want to completely wash my hands of you, which is what it sounds like, as much as I really despise what you've done to my mother. And I think as somebody who saw domestic abuse in their household, there was the distinction I had to make of my mum and my dad have their relationship, but then I have my relationship with my individual parents. And to what degree do I want that relationship to be cultivated based on who they are individually towards me? And I think then doing that mindfully of the fact that they may not like each other, so I now need to interact with them separately. Do you get what I mean? So if it is that, okay, yes, you care for your mum, but your mum never wants to see your dad again, respect that. Like, really respect that. But if it is that you want to, I'm sure your mum would understand that that's your father. You actually only get one in life. Like you probably aren't going to get another one. And so if it is that you want to have some kind of relationship with him, I think it's okay for you, and you're fully within your rights to outline the parameters of that like, I only want to speak to you on these occasions. I will send you a Christmas card. I will wish you happy birthday, just so you know you haven't been forgotten about. Do you get what I mean? But I might not invite you for dinner, you know, or you might not be at my child's first birthday or something. I'm not going to set myself up for disappointment. So I think really taking up that agency to be like, we can have a relationship, but it stops here. Like it only goes this far. This is the boundary. I think that's perfectly fine. And it's wisdom at the end of the day. If your father has not changed, if he's unrepentant, if he doesn't really care to change for his ways, or really do the proactive work of building a relationship with you that has no ulterior motive, I don't think the onus should be fully on you to rekindle that relationship. And I guess this is a really good segue into reflecting on the guys episode, especially the fatherhood episode, which you said touched you towards the end, where Ije was talking about, you know, that side of the relationship with your father can actually be recultivated. I think an important like nuance and caveat to this is both of you have to be willing. Like, both of you have to, and it may not be that both of you initiate, you know, we've both come to this realization at the same time. But I do think that both of you have to be willing to do the work to rekindle that relationship. Absolutely. And I think a lot of people have seen from, you know, parents who may struggle to take accountability, that there isn't that reciprocal effort towards cultivating that relationship. And I wanted to ask, how does one deal with that? Because as much as you want an amazing relationship with your parent, you want an amazing relationship with this person who in the past hasn't been so great to you, how do you deal with someone who may not want to take accountability, or may not see the error in their ways?
Well,
yeah,
so like,
especially being like West African.
I was about to say, so like everybody experienced to a degree, because
elderly people,
the elders,
they don't really tell you I was wrong, unless they're extremely self-aware, and it takes a journey to get to that. It's cultural, it's everything, you
go. And they've been through a lot in themselves. And
absolutely.
You know, you get to a certain age and you hear a young'un talking to you, you're like, I don't want to hear nothing that you got to say. No. I think what is very important in any journey of reconciliation with anybody is understanding that people are going to go at their pace. And I think it's so tempting for us to start our journeys of self-awareness and intentional cultivation of our character and really wanting to take people along with us. But I think the unfortunate, but sometimes fortunate reality, because I think it's realistic, right, is that people will grow and change at their pace. And the people that you are dealing with are, at the end of the day, fallible human beings. And part of the piece that comes with self-awareness is understanding that people are at different levels, and people are at different intensities, and people are at different places. So I think, if just for all the sisters that are going through that, whether it be through a parental relationship or even any kind of other relationship, friendship, romantic, it's giving people room and understanding that people will develop at different paces in the same way that you would want to be afforded that grace, right? So many times I've come to the realization that I've been wrong, or there are areas in my life that I really need to sharpen myself. Or, you know, I'm doing life with a person and I realize, oh, you're really mature in this area, but me, I still have some growing to do. I've always really appreciated that there's been some grace that's been afforded to me and some space and some time to actually get to that place. So I'd really encourage people that are holding out for a parent or kind of looking and hoping that their parent would, you know, take accountability, understanding that these things happen step by step and these things happen in season, but don't give up. I think as well, we define our timelines and our timeframes, and we want our parents to get to a place where they're at the same level as us. But people are going through different things at different times, and also the cultural experience. I think of like my parents, for example, not to excuse people's behaviors, because I think like it's really tough, especially as kids, when you've experienced an experience of your parents that has lacked in accountability or has harmed you in some way. Not to excuse from this, but I think of how long the span of my parents' life has spanned out for, and the different things that they've experienced, the people that they've experienced, the heartbreak, the harm that they've experienced. And I recognize that there may be some tools or some outlets that I have now that they didn't have. So giving them the time and space to actually realize, okay, it's not just about developing as the person, but realizing that you too now have the tools and you have, you know, the options to really opt in here and at least try. I can think of, like, God bless my mom. I love her so much. She's probably even listening to this podcast like, yeah, that's my daughter. She's usually the first person to like comment on some of these things. So shout out to my mom, love her deeply. And I think even in our candid conversations, there were some times where, you know, I would get frustrated or she would get frustrated because we were just at loggerheads and not really understanding where the other one was coming from. And there was something that she said to me that really really made me emotional. And really, it was something quite simple where she said to me, Renee, I'm actually trying. And it may not look like trying to me because we haven't gotten to the destination just yet, but the effort and making the small baby steps, even when it feels like we're still continuing at loggerheads, even when it feels like we're fighting, it's recognizing that it takes time for even the person themselves or the parents to realize, oh, I'm trying. I'm actually making an effort here. So I think a healthy dose of patience, a healthy dose of managing our own expectations so that we don't continue to break our own hearts waiting for somebody to change according to our timeline, and genuinely trust that belief in God, man. Like, I think, child, in terms of understanding bigger picture and the capacity of people to redeem themselves, I think there is no more beautiful and more perfect an example than the redemption that we have when it comes to God and the mercy that we often have when it comes to God in falling. And it's in truly having a revelation of God's mercy and God's patience with us that I think we can really understand what it takes to give that out to other people, especially the people that are closest to us.
I completely agree, and I really love that. And I think the only thing I can really add to it is it can be very hard. Like, it can just be very hard. And I think a lot of people think because these things are the virtuous thing to do, they'll be lovely and beautiful and easy, but sometimes they're actually the most gritty, the most painful, and inflict a huge degree of pain. Like, even when we think from our like Judeo-Christian point of view.
Not the Judeo-Christian.
Judeo-Christian point of view. That redemption took place through a lot of pain. Like, it was something that was really painful to even deliver. And I think sometimes we don't embrace that this is actually really painful. This feels like, to some degree, a violation, and like I'm being dumb. Because in all my power, I could dead this whole thing. I could tear you apart with my words, and I'm within my rights actually to do it. Like, I have, and I think that's the thing. It's like we hold on to our afflictions and our pains and all of these things, and it is a badge of, you've done this to me. There is evidence to that thing. And because of that, I am within my right to come down on you. I'm in my right to punish you, whether the punishment comes through my absence or, me literally being angry with you all the time or me disrespecting you. Like that is me holding on to my pain and my anger. I'm fully within my right to do that based on my experience. But if I do that, like you said, there's a level of intimacy with each other we'll never have. And I think that the issue is, if you desire intimacy, you have to let the offense go.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of us struggle with that, because it's like, I have every right to be offended by this. I have every right to be hurt by this. This literally scarred me, or I'm in therapy for this. Like, this has cost me so much. It robbed me of years of my life, or it robbed me of certain joys or confidence and all of these things. And that pain runs so deep.
Yeah.
And so for a lot of us, even though we are healing individually, we still hold on to the pain that was caused to us when it comes to this relationship with this person.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think the final part of that healing process is you have to let it go with this person. And like I said, it's not about now our relationship is perfect it's not just about that, because now there's work to be done. But the first hurdle that needs to be overcome is, I hate you. Like, it actually needs to be overcome, We need to transition from I hate you to I don't like you, right? Because I hate you is, I don't want to see you as redeemable. But I don't like you is, I see you as redeemable, but I just don't like who you are. Like, I need you to change. I need you to do this development work. And that gives somebody grace. Like, it gives them grace to change, grace to move. And it is the hard conversations of, I'm trying, but are you actually trying, right? And you'll never see somebody try if you vehemently hate them. And like, I just can't see you as a redeemable person. And I think holding on to that is what makes us bitter. And we need to be careful, because a lot of us are growing up saying, you don't want to be like our parents. But I feel like it's not necessarily repeating your parents' actions that turns you into them. It's not relinquishing the bitterness.
Yeah.
That's what makes you a bad parent. Not getting rid of that bitterness, not letting go of what the past did to you and holding on to that so much that it warps the way you treat other people. Absolutely. And it may not look the exact way your parents treated you, but oftentimes, I'm just going to be real, our parents treated us the way that they did because of a lack of maturity and unresolved bitterness that they had either towards their spouse or towards their family or towards the life that they had lived and what they had been through. And if we're not careful and we don't let go of the bitterness we now have as a result of their bad actions, we'll only perpetuate the same cycle. Absolutely. And it may look different, but it will still be the same thing. Our children will then end up healing from us, right? Needing to heal and needing to have these same conversations about, I need to put boundaries in with my mom because she acts like this. Why? Because she never forgave hers.
Listen, do you know what, Courtney? Genuinely, I'm so intrigued and interested, not in a bad way, but in like 20 years, 30 years time. I'm so interested to hear what our kids or like the next generation will now be in therapy about pertaining to this generation, because I think sometimes there's also, I don't want to say arrogance, but it is a type of superiority complex that we can have as a result of, okay, we've experienced this trauma, we want to be different, therefore in being different we're going to be better. And it's the assumption that we are going to be better because we've turned our back on our parent or we've turned our back on this situation or this trauma. And turning your back on something doesn't mean that you have dealt from it or you've healed from it. And I think there's so many of us that think that we are healing by turning our backs to this situation. It's like, no, the situation will only continue to grow. And if there's one thing when it comes to dealing with unresolved trauma, it's going to manifest in some other way. And it might not, as you were saying, manifest in the exact ways that our parents were interacting with us, but it's going to manifest badly. And it's going to end up traumatizing the next generation 100%. Of kids if we don't deal with it now. 100%.
And it is that, doing that work of dealing with it now. So yeah, it runs really, really deep. And I think when it comes to interpersonal relationships with our parents, there is so many things we have to overcome, whether it's the culture differences or the age gaps or the lack of accountability on one person's part or both people's part. It's actually a journey. Like, it really is a journey, and it can be a painful one. But you have to know what you want out of it. And I think a lot of more of us actually want intimate relationships with our parents than we actually want to admit. But our pain is that maybe because of them, we never were afforded it. And now it's like we have to build it and we don't want that responsibility. But honestly, like you are identifying, a lot of our parents have been the way that they are for longer than they've known how not to be. You know, like, this is all I've ever known. This is how I've always been. But I think something more positive that did come out of the father conversation, which I absolutely adored. Top hair, EJ. You came when you dropped wisdom, you dropped gems. But I think something so positive from that episode was just how much there are people who are actually excited about fatherhood. Like, now that they're in it, I think, let's be real. We've seen a lot of deadbeat dads. We ain't seen a lot of the deadbeat dads hanging around. I don't know where they are, but they need to come home.
They need to come back. Like, guys, your kids are waiting. Stop it.
But I think we've heard so many stories within a lot of communities, and I think, like you were saying, and we'll see the effects of this as well in the future, of how a generation that kind of was fatherless fathers another generation. But I think it's interesting to see just different representation, and that there are actually men out there who are enjoying marriage and are putting in the work and doing the hard thing and happy about being fathers and have learned from that. I just think it was so wholesome
Stuff, man.
So wholesome. And I'm so glad that we were able to actually have that conversation here. And I think that leads me to talk about, obviously, you know, when we dropped the first episode of just Renee and I talking, a lot of you had concerns.
The talk about it.
Concerns were grande, mucho grande.
This was not un poquito. This was grande.
So many of you were scared. Firstly, do you think we'd let people onto our corner of the internet who are going to insult us and our mothers?
Can you imagine?
And our sisters?
To our faces.
We're not stupid. We're not fools.
Come on.
There is
no way.
We have been CRB checking these men for years.
We've known them for you really, guys. And you know what?
Trust us more.
I appreciate that you had concerns. This was given like letter to HR. I appreciate that you had concerns. However, please, like, rate us small. We're not going to bring some. I know we said, we're going to be experimented and stuff like that, but there's experimentation and then there's actually stupidity. We like to think that we are not stupid. Yeah. And also knowing what the ethos of what To My Sisters is about. It's all about cultivating relationships. It's all about, you know, bordering the uncomfortable conversations in order to bring about reconciliation. You think we was going to reconcile with some red pill ass
guys
with no stature
after
or standing?
We've cussed Kevin Samuel since 2022. Be serious. No, we would never do that. And we do want to guarantee you, like, this will, like we said, it will be a place of conversation. Sometimes within conversations people have disagreements, but the disagreements will not be so wildly opposing philosophies. Like, guys, let's be for real.
We're not bringing men that will harm women.
This is a space where we do not want women to be harmed, right? As much as you may not agree with us all the time, our intention is never to harm anybody or make anybody feel as though they are in danger by the content that they're listening to. And I think we have a lot of episodes where we discuss how scarring the content that exists directed to women is on the internet, and how it's basically borderline bullying. And I completely understand that a lot of this has come from men, and if we're going to be specific, black men talking about black women, which feels, I understand, like, traumatic. It feels very triggering to now see a man in your space when our relationship with men on the internet and men with podcasts has not been so positive. But genuinely, we plead with you to believe in us that the same way we've been curating and cultivating this space to be a safe hub for women and sisterhood and for relationships to actually thrive and flourish, we would never deliberately bring in somebody who would disrupt that so greatly. And so we listen to your feedback, but please, guys, we would never. This is not a place for what do they call it, clickbait and all of them things there. We don't want to harm. And I think also an addition to that note, there were a couple of comments that was like, oh, this feels a bit like I think there was one person that was like, oh, I felt like the title was a little bit disparaging towards men.
And
what? Why do men move mad?
yeah. And
That's a valid question.
whilst I definitely get that, especially the intention was to be able to share with men as well, to be able to listen in. Our primary audience is women.
I was about to say, I think that was not one of my intentions.
We appreciate that there are probably men that listened in and really enjoyed the conversation. And I think it's important to have the representation of men in women's spaces speaking positively about women, but also critically in a way that's loving.
Yeah.
However, you can share with your male friends if you so please, but our priority will always be women here.
Yeah.
This is to my sisters, it's from the sisters, from the to my sisters. And until we express intently that this is a conversation that is targeted towards men, always assume that we are all about the safety. Listen, it's in our tagline, the holistic wellness and development of women across the world. Women across the world first. Once we've done that, we'll come for the men. But shout out to the men that do support us. We love you guys. And also thank you for weighing in on the conversations too.
Absolutely.
There have been some incredible men that have also like stepped up and messaged and sent so much encouragement. And we love it because we need more of that positive representation.
Absolutely.
But because of the way institutionally, but also interpersonally, a lot of these, experiences are being meted out, our number one priority is the safety of women first.
Yeah. Absolutely. But also it's the content of the video.
Yeah.
The content was so rich. And if you realize men were actually advocated for by the men. All right. So watch the full video.
Hello.
But why do men move mad was a genuine question that the girls had. So we put it in the title.
It was actually a question we received.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So the reason why I brought that up was I feel like a lot of people who I've even met in person since putting out the episodes have been asking like, why did you guys feel as though you needed to bring men on? And I think we briefly went into it in our initial conversation. But I wanted us to explain a bit more why we felt like it would actually be beneficial and add to this space which we've been working on for the last couple of years. And so why do you think it's beneficial?
I adore that question. It's giving step up to the podium to go tell you why you need some men in your life or whatnot. I think that with To My Sisters being all about, again, holistic development, this is all about doing community work. And we live in a world where we have to occupy the space with men. We have to occupy the space with people that we disagree with. We have to occupy the space with a whole host of, different folks. And I think it's important that in our efforts to facilitate reconciliation, in our efforts to build healthy women who are able to not just interact with other women and build themselves up, but can actually go out into society, can go out into their families, can go out into their friendships and have healthy relationships with the other gender. I think it's important that we actually bring men in the conversation in that means to be able to start that work. And I think it's also important that we did it on the different axes, right? We brought in brothers. They're not just men that are interested in telling you how to be a woman. They're not just men that are interested in dictating to you or bullying you like a whole bunch of men on the internet that clearly are unemployed. These are employed men that we actually had to figure out, timings for them to actually come in because they're doing work in the community. It's important because it's not just anyone we're going to bring to you, especially with the prevailing representations of men. It's actually important for us to demonstrate and show that there are good men, especially because that is the prevailing narrative, especially because we are constantly as women being harmed by the representation of men. So this was an opportunity for us to actually bring men who we believe are positive representations and also men that we can actually vouch for. I think that piece is so important too, right? Because oftentimes when we think of content creation, we think of it as pure entertainment. What we're doing here is not just about content, it's about community. It's about building community. And in doing so, we have to expose you to people that are not just here for entertainment, that are not just here to get you thinking about stuff or get you talking about stuff. We are bringing on people that we genuinely think will help you do the work, which is why we had to also bring on men. It's difficult to do the work with men without men, if that makes sense. Exactly. So it's difficult for you to go out into, your relationships or figure out your current situation without weighing in on or having that voice represented in the conversation. It doesn't make sense. We can't keep interacting with men or speaking about men and men are not at the table. We can't keep wondering and postulating and thinking about men, and we don't have men at the table to actually say, well, actually, this is what we think. And I think it's also important in terms of representation because of the negative stereotypes of men that have been portrayed by men, but also have been portrayed by women. I think it is a symptom of both patriarchy, but also internalized patriarchy, misandry, as well as internalized misandry, that we dislike men. And I think it was evident in, of course, understandably, depending on how you've interacted with men in your life, but I think it was evident in some of the comments where people were scared or like nervous or uncomfortable with bringing men onto the platform because of the legacy that they have online, but also the legacy that they have offline in community. And I think it's also been an important space where we can challenge people's conception around why men are needed and men's kind of actual perspective on things. It's so rare that we get your typical run-of-the-mill man that is actually represented online as well. Typically, we get the extremes of men, or we get the small proportion of men that is represented on, these loud echo chambers to have unfruitful conversations. And I think, lastly, doing the work of healing about men with men. So I think when I think of, we've spoken about daddy issues, we've spoken about breakups, we've spoken about just breakdowns in relationships, doing that healing work by affording men space in that conversation too. How healing it was for me to sit down and listen, especially Ije and Icy's episode, just talking about the perspective of parenting a daughter from a father. I feel like that's a perspective that we often don't hear from our own fathers, right? And affording them their humanity so that they can heal, but also we can heal too, I think is so, so important. So yeah, I'm all for having men on the podcast, especially good men that can speak to those specific areas. And my hope is that through those conversations, we're setting people free. We are having healing conversations. We are giving people an opportunity to see a different representation of men. And also we're giving hope to a generation of people that inherently believe that men are mad. Hence the question, why are men mad? But yeah, that's my thoughts. CDB, the utility of men on the TMS podcast.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think a lot of us desire to have healthier relationships with men, whether it be romantic, platonic, parental. A lot of us want to have healthier relationships, even professional, child. We want to have healthier relationships with men, be less intimidated, whether it be of the caricatures, of the presence, whatever. And I think a lot of us don't realize how deeply seated fearing men has been put into our mind. Like, I think a lot of us deep it like on a superficial level, but not how that could affect our relationships with the people we actually desire to be in relationship with. Especially if you are a heterosexual woman trying to pursue a romantic relationship with a man. This man will eventually become your spouse, your partner, whatever. This person will also become the father of your child. I think there's a need to understand the male experience and thought process in order to not be so intimidated by it, as well as knowing how to even do that. I think there is something so powerful about this podcast, which is and about podcasts in general, actually, which is giving you language to go off into your life and have conversations. And I think a lot of what we receive in terms of feedback is, you've given language to my feelings. And I think if you are able to kind of see people interacting and having a mixed gender conversation and seeing how productive it is, you then go off into your own life kind of equipped with some questions or some topics or some thoughts that you can present to the men in your life to understand more about their thought process. Because don't get it twisted, whilst the men that we brought on are absolutely amazing, they are not a representation of every man. They are unique in their own right, and their life experience is unique in themselves. So hopefully it will be a starting point for you to be able to have conversations, whether it be with your own father, with your own male friends, with your own boyfriend or husband or whatever, your cousins even, and your brothers, like actually having a conversation about their perspectives on relationships, on the different stages of manhood and their feelings toward masculinity and patriarchy and all of these things. I think that's the benefit of seeing something like that played out in front of you, because it makes the whole idea of having a conversation with a man less intimidating. And that's not to toot our own horns and be like, oh, we've done this really great angelic thing, but really to say, as much as we are a community of women who are having conversations on women's issues, one of the most dominant topics that constantly resurface is either relationships, romantic relationships, or our relationships with our fathers, right?
Child.
If we don't bring men into the conversation, there's a part of that story and that conversation which is not served, because as much as we are wise and as much as we absolutely adore and love you guys, and you know, we stay equipping ourselves with knowledge to be able to impart on this podcast, we are not men, and we'll never have we're not men. And I've said this before, but we aren't. Like, as much as we can theorize, and I think this was captured in the essence of what Kenny and Claude were saying, as much as we can theorize and as much as we can give you advice that can be coming from the best place and could absolutely be correct, there are some parts of interacting with the guy which we will not be able to tell you or understand, because we too ask ourselves the question, why do men move mad? Which goes to prove we don't understand everything about the male psyche or the male experience to fully inform you about how it's affecting their behavior within society.
Yeah.
So as much as we can sit here and we can criticize it, or we can examine it and break it down scientifically, there is something about the experience and the wisdom that brings and that perspective that enriches this whole conversation about dating or this whole conversation about marriage or whatever. And so I do think that that's the role that men on this podcast kind of plays. Not that it's going to be a regular thing. Please don't let the last 3 episodes fool you. This ain't gonna be like the whole TMS podcast is rebranding. We will go back to the sisterhood, the friendships, the female friends, the friendship breakups, all of that. We have so many more conversations in store. But I think the last couple of episodes have gone to show that there are different perspectives which enrich this personal development journey. And listening to men who are healthy, listening to men who are wise, actually wise, and who also have a stake in women being healthy and whole, and actually don't themselves endeavor to harm women recklessly. I just think it enriches us in such different ways. I think, like you identified, it helps you to also have hope.
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay, so there are men out there who are actually thinking about having healthy marriages or thinking about being, you know, healthy, functional, non-toxic fathers. Like, to see that, I think, gives you hope to know what it is you are seeking can be found. Yeah. But if you continually demonize it or are afraid of it or run away from it, you'll never fully embrace what it takes to have that. And so, yeah, that's kind of the importance that we thought of before having men on the podcast anyway. And it'll be good to hear you guys' opinion actually about if we were to have more men on the podcast, what would you like them to talk on? Like, what would you like to know about men, the male experience, husbandhood, fatherhood, working, money was a big one that even came up, and to lean more into that, actually. Some interesting things were said around finances in a relationship.
Go ahead.
So, it's interesting because when you sit down and talk to men about finances within a relationship, you kind of realize how much of a partnership marriage actually is. And, you know, shout out to Miss Sprinkle. Sprinkle. So funny. And the high value women and the was it Miss White? I think we talked about it in a TMS Hot Takes episode, but like the content that is like, girl, do not waste your time. If he's not buying you this and buying you that and giving you this cut of his salary, you are wasting your youth. You're wasting your youth. You're wasting your youth. So with that being said, it's interesting because we, outside of this, is not to put any pressure on Kenny and Claude's opinions or anything like that, but we interact with so many different men in our lives in general who have opinions about finances and relationships and the cost of dating and all of that. I wanted us to talk more on that actually from our perspective as women. Obviously, we were discussing this in our kind of debrief about the whole recordings and stuff, that like, because of the short amount of time we had with each of the guys, it was like we just wanted them to share what their thoughts are, and then we would do this separate episode to share more of what we could have shared in the episode as rebuttals, or, you know, well, my opinion is this, questions and all of that. We would save it for this just to give you guys more of the guys' perspectives. But yeah, what did you think about that? Like the cost of dating stuff?
I thought it was interesting. Because I think what was important about what Claude and Kenny in particular highlighted was there is a cost, and that there is, I think we're all aware of it. Men are in society their value is often attached to how much they can provide. So there is so much pressure on men in particular when it comes to modern dating relationships to be able to provide for their women or their spouse or whatever. So it feels like for a lot of men, they feel like they have a lot to lose when they get into things like marriage or commitments, because when your value is attached to how much you can provide, and there is a, I don't want to say drain on your provision, but now that you have more dependence on your provision, there is extra pressure, there is extra, I guess, nervousness around being able to provide for that person. And I think in a lot of different communities, the reality of the fact that quite a lot of people are in poverty, quite a lot of people are going through it. It's really difficult to make money in, you know, this economy. Having to have conversations around finances that don't reverberate how much someone can provide with you, provide for you, but rather how you can actually build a life together are very, very distinct and different conversations. So above and beyond the who's paying on the date, we need to get past that, guys. That's what I got
mature.
From, you know, what I got from that conversation. That's what the folks in their youth talk about. You're wasting your time talking about 50-50 on the date, but it's like, are you talking about things like if you want to buy a house together, what does that look like? If you are thinking of having kids, what does the split look like for both of you in terms of, is the guy traditionally going to go and provide? Is that realistic right now with the rising cost of childcare and stuff? How is your finances going to be mapped out and be organized within the context of a marriage, for example? I think Kenny touched on, but unfortunately didn't have too much time to get into, right? Thinking about things like wills, thinking about things like life insurance, thinking about the very real repercussions and the real conversations that need to be had about merging household finances. So I think it was a good entry point, but it really did make me think about how so many of us are distracted by the entry point conversations around finances, that we're not really thinking about relationships in longevity and really thinking about what does it mean financially to merge my life with somebody else's. What are the consequences of that? It's not just about like having, so many people have different names for this, but like basically F off money. So if things, you know, if things go south, I'm effing off with my funds, you know, my hidden assets or whatnot. And the level of trust that is required around finances, because finances are often cited as one of the highest reasons for divorce.
Absolutely.
People are hiding assets. Everybody's talking about, I want to get a prenup, etc. But your actual financial like landscape is in disarray. We don't know who owns what. We don't know who is, you know, a co-signer on this. We don't know how much money is needed to actually sustain your livelihood. Like, real genuine questions that I think a lot more people need to be thinking about and having conversations with their potential / future spouse long before the process. And it also makes me think of what both Claude and Kenny, but particularly Kenny, was talking about when he said that a lot of people think they're preparing for marriage, especially a lot of women, but they're preparing wrong. A lot of us are preparing for the wedding.
Say it again,
A lot
Renee.
of women are, and men to be fair, but a lot of women are preparing for wedding. We're preparing for courtship. We're preparing for dating.
Yeah.
We're preparing for that process to get us to that particular point. And then we think that everything that we have learned in this season will give us what we need for our marriage. No, baby. That's entry level.
That's a lie.
Entry level preparation.
Absolutely.
Because I'm telling you, who paid on the first date, or who's been paying for the dates whilst you guys have been courting may be important now, but then when you guys are a joint household, is it really going to matter if you have a joint card? Have you thought about that? Or like, who's the one that's consistently paying for you and making sure that you are going to all of these really nice and very expensive dates, you're eating your 42 or 48 oysters and all that kind of jazz? Are these things going to matter when one of you gets, heaven forbid, one of you gets ill and you have no critical illness cover? What's going to happen there? Did you have your money up, sis? What's going to happen if, you know, for example, you have your baby unexpectedly in the context of marriage and, you know, he takes a hit on his salary or a hit on his job? Is he no longer the man of the house? Do you now have no respect for him because he's going through a tough time? So I think it was a really important conversation. I wish we had more time, and it's giving something coming on the TMS podcast real soon. But it did make me think we need to have more conversations and we need to have more emphasis on partnership, wedding, partnerships, marriage, and what what are the financial obligations and repercussions of deciding to be in covenant with somebody?
Absolutely.
Forget the courtship, bro. Yes, the courtship can give you some signs and, you know, all that kind of stuff. But the marriage, joining yourself financially with somebody, chai. Nah, man, we're having the wrong entry-level conversations. We need to graduate.
I think that's the thing. There's the entry point and then there's the graduation within it. I think finding out how somebody's deals with money, manages money, how they spend money, like figuring out all of these things in that courtship process is really important. Figuring out what matters to you, even before you start dating, and what your expectations are and what your non-negotiables are really important. But once you do get into that place of, okay, I'm with someone and we're actually thinking about a serious lifelong commitment here, now you're talking about basically entering into a partnership. You're entering into making a household work, managing that, basically running your own little organization. And when you're doing all of that, you need to really iron out what are the details here. What are we committing to each other to do? What is our culture? What is our ethos? What is the system that will make this organization of this household and this family work? Especially once we get our, you know, elite employees, our children. when we get these little new employees within this family, what are we
not paying rent up until
what are we gonna do? How are we gonna run this organization? I think it's important to see your household, your future household, like that. There's a reason why families have systems, right? Which is whether it's the timetable you stick on your fridge or the routine that you have every day, or what you go and pick up the kids this day, I go and pick up the kids that day, or this is how much we bring in financially and how we manage and allocate that money. Those conversations are necessary. But I think you touched on a really good thing, which is oftentimes women, and it's not because we do it, it's because we are taught by society to do it, which is because to be married is the prize. We see it as the end goal. And we forget that there's a whole life after that you have to make with this man. And if you're not used to having uncomfortable conversations, if you're not used to having conversations, candid conversations about money, it can be very, very hard to just bring that up at some point within your marriage and be like, oh, actually, how much do you make? And what is your taxes on that? And where does that money go towards? And how much is your car actually costing you? And all of these things, which, I was enjoying it before, but actually, what is the cost to us? Because this is now an us. This is now an us. It's not just a benefit to me. It is now an us, which means that you paying for this also means we can't pay for that. Or me paying for this or having this amount of debt or not knowing how to make an X amount of money is actually holding our whole family back. Because once children enter into the picture, what was able to cover the both of us may not be able to cover the five of us. Hello. You know, you're counting the peas on the plate.
All of a sudden,
you get what I mean? Because you didn't have the candid conversation, but also you didn't realize how valuable of an asset you were to the household. And I know that this can be really touchy for a lot of women, but I believe that the TMS community is filled with a lot of like working professionals, entrepreneurs, and even if you want to be a stay-at-home mom, I think a lot of us understand like, okay, what's my contribution to this household? What am I bringing to the table, but what's the value that I bring here to help this organization to function? And I think a lot more of us need to think about that in alignment with the gifts and the dreams that we actually have for ourselves. Because just because you get married doesn't mean you put your destiny on hold. If you are a boss babe now, you'll be a boss babe in marriage, but it just may change. The manifestation of it may change. However, that design, that talent, that vision, those plans that you have are a really amazing contribution to your household, and it's worth submitting that to your husband, as in like putting it to him and just being like, this is what this is who I am, this is what I'm capable of doing. Do I feel like you're even an asset to me? Do I feel like you're somebody I want to partner with? Yes, you're able to buy me all of these nice things, but are you reckless with money? Is your income actually stable? If there is there longevity in your industry or the way that you make money? Like I really need to sit down and think about the fact that I'm coming into this organization as a co-founder. Is this worth the deal? Like, is this actually worth the deal for me? Do I feel like this is a company worth investing in? Yes, I have shares here, but if the shares all amount to 1 pence, it's not really worth it.
Because you can't buy much with one penny, can you?
You can't buy much with 1 penny.
You can't even go to pound
line. You can't. Pound line where nothing is even a pound anymore.
But that's also another thing, right? Inflation.
Things will change. And that's why I'm saying you also have to think, is there longevity in your industry? Is there room for you to grow as a person? What is your vision at this point? Because at the end of the day, we are young. Like, we don't, you in your 30s, you're in your 40s. We're still young. We're only halfway through our life. We still need to figure out, is this worth committing the second half of my life to, or the majority of my life to?
Please.
If you are popping now, but in 5 years,
oh baby,
you can't make money. How we gonna eat? Are you now a dependent?
And then now you're gonna be looking at this person with resentment.
And the thing is, even if you are a dependent, that's fine. Have we planned for this? Like, it's like what you were saying about the life insurance, critical illness cover, like really making sure that even income protection, making sure you have certain things in place to be like, if ish hits the fan, we are all good. And sis, I'm sorry to break it to you, but what a lot of these kind of dating gurus and people on the internet who teach you to kind of just be a money grabber, let's just be honest, aren't telling you is that you have to have a leadership mind on when it comes to your household. Honestly, too. When it comes to your family, and it's even back to the dilemma, right? Thinking about having future children, you need to be the one thinking about, how do we set up a future that allows these children to flourish? It's not just about me and me enjoying my husband in a specific way. It's about me understanding what the shared vision between me and my long-term partner is, and whether this will set our children up for the future I want them to have. And there's an episode coming up actually talking about generational wealth and legacy from a female point of view, which I'm really excited for everyone to listen to, because I think the more of us who get into that mindset, the more we will have those necessary conversations during the courting and dating phase, because you're realizing I'm not just here to enjoy a relationship just with you. I can go outside with my girls.
But it was just wasting time, and just the metrics that we use to define success and our values in a relationship just need to be reviewed. A man can be making 6 figures, but is he making it legally? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, a man can be, driving in a really nice, I love what you were saying. He could be driving in a really nice car. How do you know that this guy is not on his last legs when it comes to being in debt? How do you know if he, is in good standing when it comes to credit? If you wanted to buy a house later down the line, only to discover that this guy has got like 100 out of 1,000 on his credit score. No, like, no tea, no shade, but it's like, having the correct metrics to understand whether this will be a successful long-term relationship is important, not just courtship, and not whether he's showing you the signs of, I want to be a provider for you. It's nice to have the intention, but do you have the characteristics that determine whether you're going to be able to do this? And I think also divesting from what you think partnership should be based off of other people's ideals as well. Because there are a whole bunch of thriving households that we've come across where the woman is the high earner and she's the one that is going out, and it's the guy that's decided to be more of a domestic or stay-at-home dad. That's also perfectly fine. But making sure that you have that agreement with your partner for the long term, or even seasonally, because it may be a season. I love what you were saying about the boss babes, right? There may be a season where you're really killing it for the family and your husband, partner, whatever, has decided to take a backseat to allow you to flourish whilst you are in that position. And then vice versa. There was a couple that I knew, one of my colleagues, where they had done just that. So for the first 10 years of their life, it was actually her who really thrived in directorial roles. And it was him who decided to stay at home with the kids. And then when the 10-year period was over, she decided, I'm going to take a step back. I'm going to do more part-time roles, and you can do your absolute thing. He ended up being a really thriving lawyer, and it worked for them. So don't allow the popular conceptions of what a relationship should be and look like based on social media, based on echo chambers, based on people that are outside the confines of your relationship, dictate how your relationship should go. I love what you were saying about the co-founder example. You are co-founders. You have equal investment in this relationship for it to win. Unless these people have been employed as your board of advisors, I would suggest that you actually take on what your co-founder says above and beyond people who at best are merely spectators and commentators on your life.
They're not even your target audience.
They're not even, bro.
They're not even your consumer base. It's not worth investing in.
Not even your target audience.
And I love what you said even about like the seasons of things, just especially when we have these very vain metrics of who we should date and stuff, we then go for people who are literally living at the maximum that they can. So yes, he drives an amazing car. Yes, he lives in an amazing place. Yes, he takes you to all these fancy places. But this is the starting point for you guys. And he's already at 90% of his income. So once you guys now expand as a family, where's the room for? You can only maximally expand 10% of where you are. Anything more than that, anything else, we have a big problem. And you've come in with this expectation of not only will this be sustained, it will have to grow. Because when it comes to marriage, I think as much as some things become cheaper, like we all know, it's actually more expensive to be single and live than it is to be married. Like cost per head, basically.
How wicked
the world is.
So wicked.
How wicked.
To single people, we just want to live. So wicked.
But a lot of Western systems are built on the premise of marriage, like the concept of marriage, like two people together making things work, which is, fine. But we know that the costs over you both will increase. You need maybe you're living in a 1-bed, now you need 2-bed. What if kids come? What if guests come? We now, instead of
someone
just
listening to this saying F them guests.
all of these things, you get what I mean? Instead of 1 car, you may need 2 cars. Like, it's all of these things. And if this person is already living at the threshold of what they have, where is there room to grow unless they go and get a job that promotes them with a 50, 100% pay increase? That can be really, really difficult. So even when you're courting someone, yes, this is their income potential. But if you're putting all of this pressure on them to be like, buy me all of these things, you're now causing them to live at the top of that threshold, which leaves no room for growth. What you need is somebody who knows how to do things like budget. It's not sexy. Somebody telling you, I need to put money in my savings so I can't buy you this thing, is not a lack of romance. It's actually responsibility. And I think us looking for people who are responsible rather than this superficial idea of romance will help us find better long-term partners.
100%.
I'm not encouraging you to be with somebody who's stingy or somebody who is just like, I'm never going to meet you in any way. I don't care about your love language. I don't care about, because a lot of us didn't see romance growing up either. Do you get me? All for the sake of, we need to save, we need to scrimp. So I think you need to, again, have a conversation, a candid conversation with your partner, which is, what does us enjoying our relationship look like? Like, what's the frequency? What are we committed to? What does it look like? What is your love language? What does loving you look like, and how do you receive it? But then also, what is our plan for the future, and how do we adequately prepare for that? And I understand that I might have to make some compromises. I might have to make some concessions, and that's not settling. That is maturity. That is foresight. That is wisdom. And I think a lot of us are being shamed into thinking us having wisdom about a relationship is us settling. And I really think that's a ploy from the enemy.
The
It's
devil
not
himself.
stupid. It's not stupid to want longevity and sustainability to your relationships. Because if you really go and ask a lot of these gurus how their marriages are turning out,
some tumbleweed just drifted across. You guys can't see it. There's some tumbleweed that just drifted
and
across.
don't come to me with one example. Oh, this person's really happy.
This person's really happy.
You silly Billy goat.
Liars!
Is that the majority of people?
You know what I'm saying?
Let's look at the statistics.
No, but even though sometimes they'll bring their spouse say, look happy. They don't look happy.
Or they're living in one remote village somewhere where the cost of living is 90 pence a day.
Living in
and they can make it work. Do you get what I mean? So it's like,
island. Even
within them, there's been a strategy implemented. You don't have a strategy. You just have aspirations. Figure out the strategy.
Oh,
a mood board is not a strategy.
That is
It's
so
not a
funny. A
strategy.
Pinterest mood board.
It's not a strategy.
Goes quickly to Pinterest.
Do you know what I mean?
to
And
remove
I
my-
get pictured, low exposure pictures of girls at Novikov with the big bunch of flowers and a Cartier bracelet and necklace and a Van Cleef. That's not a strategy.
That's what they're going to take from you when the bailiffs are coming at your door.
That is not an effective strategy.
Excuse me, can I have your bracelet? You have right to pay, you didn't pay it.
You didn't pay it. That is not a strategy. An aspiration is not a strategy. Figure out the strategy as well. Like, and I'm not saying you shouldn't have aspirations or want those aesthetic things, but make the important things the important things. And it's beautiful to be able to have the excess and the abundance to do all of these nice things. But guys, don't let society fool you. Those things are luxuries. A lot of us are not at a stage in our life where we can afford to have luxuries. We're still building the necessities. We're still building the foundations of wealth and the foundations that make a family. You know, and it's okay in your 20s and your 30s to be putting those foundations in. Most millionaires don't even emerge till they're 37 on average. So why are we all here pressuring ourselves to live a luxurious millionaire lifestyle when we haven't even got the cornerstones in place? Girl.
And also, like, be friends with your partner, because it's only with your friends that you can tell them when you're broke, when things are up, and just you feel a lot more comfortable having those conversations. I think when we look at our partners as people that are simply providers, we forget their personhood. And I think it's so important to see the person. We've said this so many times on this podcast, but I think bringing the men really reminded us that we're dealing with people, right? Like, I think of someone like Ije, who's been married for, it's even... By the time they hear this, it's past their, you know, wedding anniversary. People that have actually been married for over 2 decades, mind you. And interacting with them as a couple, you can just see that they're friends. Like, they're partners, but you can see that they're friends. And there's nothing like finances or something minute that would come between them that would prevent them from still seeing each other as friends. So as much as we often like highlight it in passing and say, oh, you got to be friends with your partner, it's important. It's that deep sense of friendship. Romance can only get you so far. Yes, you can provide. Yes, you can have all these ostentatious gifts and really cool stuff as a result of the romantic element of your relationship. But you really need to cultivate a friendship in partnership. Like, that needs to be your friend, man. It's friends that build together. I mean, obviously, this is a platonic example. English. It's okay. A platonic example of such, but friendship really is the foundation of most relationships, you know, when I think about it. We often talk about, you know, friendship between woman and woman, but a lot of these principles can really apply in romance as well. Hey, we are beating the allegations, please. We told you we're too Christian.
No, facts. No, the reason why I wanted to say that is I remember at one of our at an event we were at, that somebody was like, I've read your book and it's such great principles for relationships. And I think if you haven't gotten our book already, definitely read it. I see how it applies. I think a lot of us, because we haven't put emphasis on the importance of friendships and being a good friend, we don't know how to be good spouses. We don't know how to be good partners because we don't cultivate the friendship element, which is so important. So yeah, that's what came to my mind, that I wanted to emphasize, that when you don't value friendship, you don't know the true value of a relationship, right? Because true intimacy is just friendship on a different level. But yeah, we've been here for a while.
Do you know what?
It was nice being back on the blue couch.
I was about to say, maybe it's because we haven't been on the blue couch for a while. We thought we had a lot to say, and it's good to be back. It
is. More episodes are coming. Guest episodes from us, reflecting on those episodes. Send us things you want us to talk about in TMS Hot Takes. Obviously, we've been out of the game for a couple of weeks. What's been going on the interweb that you want our social commentary on? But sisters, we deeply love you. We appreciate you guys so much for all the support you show to us and just how you embrace the innovations, you know, and the new things that we bring. We continually want to reiterate, and we want to do that alongside you. So give us feedback. Yes, please. And we are sending you all the love. We are loving on y'all, praying for y'all, continually here serving you guys as well. So we'll see you in next week's episode. Make sure that you follow us on all social media.
You already know.
Okay, at To My Sisterhood, at Renee Kapuku, at CD Boating. You can actually find us wherever you go.
Wherever you go, To My Sisters must follow. Or rather, To My Sisters must go, you must follow. But follow God before that. Anyway. And of course, if you really want to just double down and really understand more about how you can cultivate these relationships, these friendships, these community principles, then you can sign up to our mailing list over at www.tomysisters.com. Please, if you haven't signed up, stop fooling yourself. Get plugged in. It's literally, listen, those that are on the mailing list, they always get first dibs on everything.
It's free.
And it's free.
It's actually free of charge. Like, free of charge. We give you early access to stuff. Like, don't be a silly Billy. There's a lot coming up.
And some of you have been silly Billies for years. Change your destiny.
Wow.
No, because some of you...
This is the bullying on the internet. They talk
Sorry.
I'm joking.
Well,
I'm joking.
this is the clip they're going to surface when they want to take me down. Oh my God. Cancel Renee, she's a bully. But come, let me redeem myself and redeem ourselves by signing up to the mailing list.
Yeah.
We send love letters there, so
do.
you'll feel
Pure love notes.
loved.
It's cute. Well, sisters, we hope you have an amazing weekend. You've enjoyed these conversations. We'll see you soon with a guest and with ourselves. Manage what you get. All right. Bye. Oh, keep glowing and growing.
That's how you know it's been a while.